life and death. There are two sides to every story. You know Bella and Edward. Now you get to know Beau and Edythe. When Buford Swan moves to the gloomy town of Forks and meets the mysterious, alluring Edythe Cullen, his life takes a thrilling, terrifying turn. With her porcelain skin, golden eyes, mesmerizing voice, and supernatural gifts, Edythe is both irresistible and enigmatic. What Beau doesn't realize is the closer he gets to her, and the more he is putting himself and those around him at risk. And it might be too late to turn back. Preface. I've never given much thought to dying, though I'd had reason enough in the last few months. But even if I had, I wouldn't have imagined it like this. I stared across the room into the dark eyes of the hunter, and she looked pleasantly back at me. At least it was a good way to die, in the place of someone else, someone I loved. Noble, even. That ought to count for something. I knew that I'd never gone to Forks. I knew that if I'd never gone to Forks, I wouldn't be about to die now. But as terrified as I was, I couldn't bring myself to regret the decision. When life offers you a dream so far beyond any of your expectations, it's not reasonable to grieve when it comes to an end. The hunter smiled in a friendly way as she sauntered forward to kill me. Chapter 1. First Sight. January 17, 2005. My mom drove me to the airport with the windows rolled down. Though it was January everybody else, it was 75 degrees in Phoenix, and the sun was bright blue. I had on my favorite t-shirt, the Monty Python one with the swallows and the coconut that Mom got me 2 Christmases ago. It didn't quite fit anymore, but that didn't matter. I wouldn't be needing t-shirts again soon. In the Olympic Peninsula of Northwest Washington State, a small town named Forks exists under a near constant cover of clouds. It rains on the insignificant town more than any other place in the United States of America. It was from this town and its depressing gloom that my mom escaped with me when I was only a few months old. It was in this town that I'd been forced to spend a month every summer until I was 14. That was the year I finally started making ultimatums. These past 3 months, my dad, Charlie, vacationed with me in California for 2 weeks instead. Yet somehow I now found myself exiled to Forks for the rest of my high school education. A year and a half, 18 months. It felt like a prison sentence. 18 months, hard time. When I slammed the car door behind me, it made a sound like the clang of iron bars locking into place. Okay, just a tad melodramatic there. I have an overreactive imagination, as my mom was fond of telling me. And of course, this was my choice, self-imposed exile. It didn't make it any easier. I loved Phoenix. I loved the sun and the dry heat and the big spiraling city. And I loved living with my mom, where I was needed. You don't have to do this, my mom said to me, the last of 100 times, just before I got to the TSA post. My mom says we look so much alike that I could use her for a shaving mirror. It's not entirely true, though. I don't look much like my dad at all. Her chin is pointy and her lips full, which is not like me, but we do have exactly the same eyes. On her, they're childlike, so wide and pale blue that it makes her look like my sister rather than my mom. We get that all the time, and though she pretends not to, she loves it. On me, the pale blue is less useful and more unresolved. Staring at those wide, worried eyes, so much like my own, I felt panicked. I'd been taking care of my mom for my whole life. I mean, I'm sure there must have been a time, probably when I was still in diapers, that I wasn't in charge of the bills and paperwork and cooking and general level-headedness, but I couldn't remember it. Was leaving my mom to fend for herself really the right thing to do? It had seemed like it was. During the months I'd struggled towards the decision, but it felt all kinds of wrong now. Of course she had Phil these days, so the bills would probably get paid on time. There would be food in the fridge, gas in the car, and someone to call when she got lost. She didn't need me as much anymore. I want to go, I lied. I've never been a good liar, but I've been saying this lie so much lately that it almost sounded convincing now. Tell Charlie I said hi. I will. I'll see you soon, she promised. You can come home whenever you want. I'll come right back as soon as you need me. But I knew what it would cost her to do that. Don't worry about me, I insisted. I'll be great. I love you, Mom. She hugged me tightly for a minute and then walked through the metal detectors and she was gone. It's a 3-store flight from Phoenix to Seattle. Another hour in a small plane up to Port Angeles. It was a 3-hour flight from Phoenix to Seattle. Another hour in a small plane up to Port Angeles. And then an hour drive back down to Forks. Flying's never bothered me. The hour in the car with Charlie, though, I was a little worried about. Charlie had really been pretty decent about the whole thing. He seemed genuinely pleased that I was coming to live with him sort of permanently for the first time. He'd already gotten me registered for high school and was going to help me get a car, but it would be awkward. Neither of us was what you'd call extroverted. Probably a necessary thing for living with my mother, but aside from that, what was there to say? It wasn't like I'd kept the way I felt about Forks a secret. When I landed in Port Angeles, it was raining. It wasn't an omen, just inevitable. I'd said my goodbyes to the sun. Charlie was waiting for me with the cruiser. This I was expecting too. Charlie's police chief swan to the good people of Forks. My primary motivation behind buying a car, despite my serious lack of funds, was that I hated driving around town in a car with red and blue lights on top. Nothing slows down traffic like a cop. I stumbled off the plane into Charlie's awkward one-armed hug. It's good to see you, Beau, he said, smiling as he automatically steadied me. We patted each other's shoulders, embarrassed, and then stepped back. You haven't changed much. How's Renee? Mom's great. It's good to see you too, Dad. I wasn't supposed to call him Charlie to his face. You really feel okay about leaving her? We both understood that this question wasn't about my own personal happiness. It was about whether I was shirking my responsibility to look after her. This was the reason Charlie never fought Mom about custody. He knew she needed me. Yeah, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. Sure. Fair enough. I only had 2 big duffel bags. Most of my Arizona clothes were too permeable for Washington climate. My mom and I had pooled our resources to supplement my winter wardrobe, but it still wasn't much. I could handle both of them, but Charlie insisted on taking one. It threw my balance off a little. Not that I was ever really balanced, especially since the growth spurt. My foot caught on the lip of the exit door, and my bag swung out and hit the guy trying to get in. Oh, sorry. The guy wasn't much older than me, and he was a lot shorter, but he stepped up to my chest with the rein raised high. I could see tattoos on both sides of his neck. A small woman with hair dyed solid black stared menacingly at me from the other side. Sorry? She repeated, like an apology had been offensive somehow. Yeah. And the woman noticed Charlie, who was in uniform. Charlie didn't even have to say anything. He just looked at the guy, who backed up half a step and suddenly seemed a lot younger. And then the girl, whose sticky red lips settled into a pout. Without another word, they ducked around me and hid into the tiny terminal. Charlie and I both shrugged at the same time. It was funny how we had the same mannerisms when we didn't spend much time together. Maybe it was genetic. I found a good car for you, really cheap, Charlie announced when we strapped into the cruiser and was on our way. What kind of car? I asked, suspicious of the way he said good car for you, and opposed to just good car. Well, it's a truck, actually. A Chevy. Where did you find it? Do you remember Bonnie Black down at La Push? La Push is a small Indian reservation on the nearby coastline. No. She and her husband used to go fishing with us during the summer, Charlie prompted. That would explain why I didn't remember her. I do a good job of blocking out painful things from my memory. She's in a wheelchair now, Charlie continued when I didn't respond, so she can't drive anymore, and she offered to sell me her truck cheap. What year is it? I could see from the change in expression that this was the question he was hoping I wouldn't ask. Well, Bonnie's had a lot of work on the engine. It's only a few years old, really. Well, Bonnie's had a lot of work done on the engine. It's only a few years old, really. Did he think I would give up that easily? When did she buy it? She bought it in 1984, I think. Did she buy it new? Well, no. I think it's new in the early 60s or late 50s at the earliest, he admitted sheepishly. Dad, I don't really know anything about cars. I wouldn't be able to fix anything that broke, and I couldn't afford a mechanic. Really, Beau, the thing runs great. They don't build them like that anymore. The thing, I thought to myself, it had possibilities, as a nickname at the very least. How cheap is cheap? After all, that part was the deal killer. Well, son, I kind of already bought it for you, as a homecoming gift. Charlie glanced sideways at me with a hopeful expression. Wow, free. You don't need to do that, Dad. I was going to buy myself a car. I don't mind. I want you to be happy here. He was looking ahead at the road when he said this. Charlie had never been comfortable with expressing emotions out loud. Another thing we had in common. So I was looking straight ahead as I responded. That's amazing, Dad. Thanks. I really appreciate it. No need to add that he was talking about impossibilities. Wouldn't help anything for him to suffer along with me. And I never looked a free truck in a month, or rather engine. Well, now, you're welcome, he mumbled, embarrassed by my thanks. That was pretty much it for the conversation. We stared out the windows. It was probably beautiful or something. Everything was green, the trees covered in moss, both the trunks and the branches, the ground blanketed with ferns. Even the air had turned green by the time it filtered through the leaves. It was too green, an alien planet. Eventually, we made it to Charlie's. He still lived in the small 2-bedroom house that he bought with my mother in the early days of their marriage. Those were the only kinds of days their marriage had, the early ones. There, parked on the street in front of the house that never changed, was my new to me, truck. It was a faded red color with big curvy fenders and a rounded cap, and I loved it. I wasn't really a car guy, so I was kind of surprised by my own reaction. I mean, I didn't even know if it would run, but I could see myself in it. Plus, it was one of those solid iron monsters that never gets damaged. The kind that you can see at the scene of an accident. Paint unscratched, surrounded by pieces of foreign cars it had destroyed. Wow, Dad, it's awesome, thanks. Serious enthusiasm this time. Not only was the trunk strangely cool, but now I wouldn't have to walk 2 miles in the rain to school in the morning, or accept a ride in the cruiser, which was obviously worst case scenario. I'm glad you like it, Charlie said gruffly, embarrassed again. It took only one trip to get my stuff upstairs. I got the west bedroom that faced out over the front yard. The room was familiar. It had belonged to me since I was born. The wooden floor, the light blue walls, the peaked ceiling, the faded blue and white checked curtains around the window. These were all part of my childhood. The only changes Charlie had ever made were switching the crib for a bed and adding a desk as I grew. The desk now held a second-hand computer with a phone line for the modem stapled along the floor to the nearest phone jack. This was one of my mother's requirements, so that we could stay in touch. The rocking chair from my baby days were still in the corner. There was only one small bathroom at the top of the stairs, which I would have to share with Charlie. But I had to share with my mom before, and that was definitely worse. She had a lot more stuff, and she doggedly resisted all my attempts to organize any of it. One of the best things about Charlie is that he doesn't hover. He left me alone to get unpacked and settled, which would have been totally impossible for my mom. It was nice to be alone, not to have to smile and look comfortable. A relief to stare out the window at the sheeting rain and let my thoughts get dark. Forks High School had just 357, now 58 students. There were more than 700 people in my junior class alone back home. All the kids here had grown up together. Their grandparents had been toddlers together. I would be the new kid from the big city, something to stare at and whisper about. Maybe if I had been one of the cool kids, I could make this work for me. Come in all popular, homecoming king style, but there would be no hiding. The fact that I was not that guy Not the football star, not the class president, not the bad boy on the motorcycle. I was the kid who looked like he should be good at basketball until I started walking. The kid who got shoved into lockers until I suddenly shot up 8 inches sophomore year. The kid who was too quiet and too pale, who didn't know anything about gaming or cars or baseball statistics or anything else I was supposed to be into. Unlike the other guys, I didn't have a ton of free time for hobbies. I had a cheap checkbook to balance, a clogged drain to snake, and a week's groceries to shop for. Or I used to. So I didn't relate well with people my age. Maybe the truth was that I didn't relate well to people, period. Even my mother, who I was closest to of anyone on the planet, never really understood me. Sometimes I wondered if I was seeing the same things through my eyes as the rest of the world was seeing through theirs. Like maybe what I saw as green was what everyone saw as red. Maybe I smelled vinegar and they smelled coconuts. Maybe there was a glitch in my brain. But the cause didn't matter. All that mattered was the effect, and tomorrow would be just the beginning. I didn't sleep well that night, even after I finally got my head to shut up. The constant whooshing of the rain, the wind across the roof wouldn't fade into the background. I pulled the old quilt over my head and later added the pillow again, but I couldn't just fall asleep until after midnight, when the rain finally settled into a quieter drizzle. Thick fog was all I used to see out my window in the morning, and I could feel the claustrophobia creeping up on me. You never could see the sky here. It was like a prison cage I imagined. Breakfast with Charlie was quiet. He wished me good luck at school. I thanked him, knowing his help was a waste of time. Good luck tended to avoid me. Charlie left first off to the police station. That was his wife and family. After he left, I sat at the old square oak table in one of the 3 unmatching chairs and stared at the familiar kitchen. With its dark paneled walls, bright yellow cabinets, and white linen floor. Nothing had changed. My mom had painted the cabinets 18 years ago, trying to bring some sunshine into the house. Over the small fireplace, the adjoining microscopic family room was a row of pictures. First, the wedding picture of Charlie and my mom in Las Vegas, then one of the 3 of us in the hospital after I was born, taken by a helpful nurse, followed by a procession of school pictures up to this year. Those were embarrassing to look at. The bad haircuts, the braces years, the acne that I finally cleared up. I would have to see what I could do to get Charlie to put them somewhere else. At least while I was living here. It was impossible, being in this house, not to realize that Charlie had never gotten over my mom. It made me uncomfortable. I didn't want to be too early to school, but I couldn't stay in the house anymore. I put on my jacket, thick, non-breathing plastic like a biohazard suit, and headed out into the rain. It was just drizzling still, not enough to soak me through immediately as I reached for the house keys that was always hidden under the eave of the door, and locked up. The sloshing of my new waterproof boots sounded weird. I missed normal crunch of gravel as I walked. Inside the truck, it was nice and dry. Either Bonnie or Charlie had obviously cleaned it up. But the tan, upholstered seats still smelled faintly of tobacco, gasoline, and peppermint. The engine started quickly, which was a relief, but loudly, roaring to life and then idling at top volume. Well, a truck this old was bound to have a flaw. The antique radio worked, a bonus I hadn't expected. Finding the school wasn't difficult. Like most other things, it was just off the highway. It wasn't obvious at first that it was a school. Only the sign which declared it to be Forks High School clued me in. It looked like a collection of matching houses, built in with maroon-colored bricks. There were many trees and shrubs I couldn't see its size at first. Where was the feel of the institution? I thought. Where was the chain-link fences, the metal detectors? I parked by the first building, which had a small sign over the door reading front office. No one else was parked there, so I was sure it was off limits, but I decided I would get directions inside instead of circling around in the rain like an idiot. Inside it was brightly lit and warmer than I had hoped. The office was small. There was a little waiting area and padded folding chairs, orange-flecked commercial carpet, notices and awards cluttering the walls, and the big clock ticking loudly. Plants grew everywhere in the large plastic pots, as if there weren't enough greenery outside. The room was cut in half by a long counter, cluttered with wire, baskets full of papers, and brightly colored flappers tapped to the front. There were 3 desks behind the counter. A round, balding man in glasses sat at one. He was wearing a t-shirt, which immediately made me feel overdressed for the weather. The balding man looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'm Beau Swan," I informed him, and saw the quick recognition in his eyes. I was expected. I already had the subject of gossip. The chief's son, the one with the unstable mom, could home at last. "Of course," he said. He dug through a leaning stack of papers on his desk till he found the ones he was looking for. "I have your schedule right here, Buford, and a map of school." He brought several sheets to the counter to show me. "It's Beau, please." "Oh, sure, Beau." He went through my classes for me, highlighting the best routes to each on the map, and gave me a slip to have teacher sign, which I was to bring back at the end of the day. He smiled at me and hoped, like Charlie, that I would like it here in Forks. I smiled back as convincingly as I could. When I went back out to my truck, other students were starting to arrive. I drove around the school, following the line of traffic. Most of the cars were older like mine, nothing flashy. At home, I lived in one of the few lower-income neighborhoods that were included in Paradise Valley District. It was a common thing to see a new Mercedes or Porsche in the student lot. The nicest car here was a brand new silver Volvo, and it stood out. Still, I cut the engine as soon as I was in spot, so other than air-splitting volume wouldn't draw attention to me. I looked at the map in the truck, trying to memorize it now. Hopefully, I wouldn't have to walk around with it stuck to the front of my nose all day. I stuffed everything into my backpack, slung the strap over my shoulder, and stuffed in a huge breath. "It won't be that bad," I lied to myself. Seriously, though, this wasn't a life-or-death situation. It was just high school. It's not like anyone was going to bite me. I finally exhaled and stepped out of the truck. I pulled my hood over my face as I walked to the sidewalk, crowded with teenagers. My plain black jacket didn't stand out. I was glad to see, though there wasn't much I could do about my height. I hunched my shoulders and kept my head down. Once I got around my cafeteria, Building 3 was easy to spot. A large black 3 was painted on the white square on the east corner. I followed 2 unisex raincoats through the door. The classroom was small. The people in front of me stopped just inside the door to hang up their coats on the long row of hooks. I copied them. They were 2 girls, one a porcelain-colored blonde and the other also pale, with light brown hair. At least my skin wouldn't be a standout here. I took the slip up to the teacher, a narrow woman with thinning hair whose desk had a nameplate identifying her as Miss Mason. She gawked at me when she saw my name, discouraging, and I could feel the blood rush to my face, no doubt forming unattractive splotches across my cheeks and neck. At least she sent me to an empty desk at the back without introducing me to the class. I tried to fold myself into the little desk as inconspicuously as possible. It was harder for my new classmates to stare at me in the back, but somehow they managed. I kept my eyes down on the reading list the teacher had given me. It was pretty basic. Bonnie, Shakespeare, Kocher, Faulkner. I'd already read everything. That was comforting and boring. I wondered if my mom would send me my folder of old essays, or if she would think that was cheating. I went through different arguments with her in my head while the teacher droned on. When the bell rang, a pale, skinny girl with skin problems and hair black as oil, slick leaned across the aisle to talk to me. "You're Buford Swan, aren't you?" She gave me a vibe of an overly helpful chess club type. Beau, I corrected. Everyone within a 3-seat radius turned to look at me. Where's your next class? She said. I had to check my bag. Governor Whit Jefferson in Building 6. There was nowhere to look without meeting curious eyes. I'm headed towards the Building 4. I could show you the way. Definitely over helpful. I'm Erica, she added. I forced a smile. Thanks. We got our jackets and headed out into the rain, which I had picked up. Several people seemed to be walking too close behind us, like they were trying to eavesdrop or something. I hoped I wasn't getting paranoid. So this is a lot different than Phoenix, huh? She said. Very. It doesn't rain much there, does it? 3 or 4 times a year. Wow, that must be like... Wow, what must that be like, she wondered. Sonny, I told her. You don't look very tan. My mother is part albino. She studied my face uneasily, and I stiffed a groan. It looked like clouds and sense of humor didn't mix. A few months of this, and I'd forget how to use sarcasm. We walked back around the cafeteria to the sound of building by the gym. Erica followed me right to the door, though it was clearly marked. Well, good luck, she said, and touched the handle. Maybe we'll have some other classes together. She sounded hopeful. I smiled at her, in what I hoped was not an encouraging way, and went inside. The rest of the morning passed in about the same way. Mr. Trigonometry teacher, my teacher, Mr. Varner, who I would have disliked anyway just because of the subject she taught, was the only one who made me stand in front of the class and introduce myself. I stammered, went splotchy red, and tripped over my own boots on the way to my seat. After 2 days, I started to recognize some faces in each room. There were always someone braver, and the others would introduce themselves and ask questions about how I liked forks. I tried to be diplomatic, but mostly I just lied a lot. At least I never needed the map. In every class, the teacher started out calling me Buford, and though I corrected him immediately, it was depressing. It had taken me 2 years to live down Buford. Thank you so much, Grandpa, for dying just months before I was born and making my mom feel obligated to honor you. No one at home even remembered that Beau was just a nickname anymore. Now I had to start all over again. One guy sat next to me in both Trig and Spanish, and he walked with me to the cafeteria for lunch. He was short, not even up to my shoulder, but his crazy curly hair made up some of the difference between our heights. I couldn't remember his name, so I smiled and nodded as he rattled on about teachers and classes. I didn't try to keep up. He sat at the end of a full table with several of his friends, who he introduced to me. Couldn't complain about the manners here. I forgot all their names as soon as he said them. They seemed to think it was cool that he'd invited me. The girl from English, Erica, waved at me from across the room, and they all laughed. Already, the butt of the joke. It was probably a new record for me, but none of them seemed mean-spirited about it. It was there, sitting in the lunchroom, trying to make conversation with 7 curious strangers, that I first saw them. They were seated in the corner of the cafeteria as far away from where I sat as possible in the long room. There were 5 of them. They weren't talking, they weren't eating, though they had a tray of food in front of them. They weren't gawking at me, unlike most of the other students, so it was safe to stare at them. But it was none of these things that caught my attention. They didn't look anything alike. There were 3 girls. One I could tell was super tall, even sitting down, maybe as tall as I was. Her legs went on forever. She looked like she might be the captain of the volleyball team, and I was pretty sure you wouldn't want to get in the way of one of her spikes. She had dark curly hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Another had hair the color of honey hanging on her shoulders. She was not quite so tall as the brunette, but still probably taller than most of the other guys at the table. There was something intense about her, edgy. It was kind of weird, but for some reason she made me think of this actress I'd seen in an action movie a few weeks ago, who took down a dozen guys with a machete. I remember thinking that I didn't buy it, that there was no way the actress could have taken down that many bad guys and won. But I thought now that I might have bought it if the character had been played by this girl. The last girl was smaller, with hair somewhere between red and brown, but different than either. Kind of a metallic somehow, a bronzy color. She looked younger than the other two, who could have been in college easy. The two guys were opposites. The taller one, who was definitely taller than me, I'd guess was 6'5" or even more, was clearly the school's star athlete, and the prom king, and the guy who always had dibs on whatever equipment he wanted in the weight room. His straight gold hair was wound in a bun on the back of his head, but there was nothing feminine about it. Somehow it made him look even more like a man. He was clearly too cool for this school, or any other I could imagine. The shorter guy was wiry, his dark hair buzzed so short it was just a shadow across his scalp. Totally different, and yet they were exactly alike. Every one of them was chalky pale, the palest of all students living in the sunless town, paler than me, the albino. They all had very dark eyes. From here they looked black, despite the range in their hair colors. There were deep shadows under their eyes, purple shadows, like bruises. Maybe the 5 of them had just pulled an all-nighter, or maybe they were recovering from broken noses. Except that their noses, all their features, were straight, angular. But that wasn't why I couldn't look away. I stared because their faces, so different, so similar, were insanely and humanly beautiful. The girls and the guys both, beautiful. They were faces you never saw in real life, just airbrushed in magazines and billboards or in a museum, painted by an old master as the face of an angel. It was hard to believe they were real. I decided the most beautiful of all was the smaller girl with the bronze-colored hair. Though I expected the female half of the student body would vote for was the movie star blonde girl. They would be wrong, though. I mean, all of them were gorgeous, but the girl was something more than just beautiful. She was absolutely perfect. It was an upsetting, disturbing kind of perfection. It made my stomach uneasy. They were all looking away from each other, away from the rest of the students, away from anything in particular, as far as I could tell. It reminded me of the models posed oh so artistically for an ad. For an ad. As I watched, the wiry skinhead guy arose with his tray, unopened soda, untouched apple, and walked away with a quick, graceful loop that belonged on a runway. I watched, wondering if they had a dance company here in town, till he dumped his tray and glided through the back door, faster than I would have thought possible. My eyes darted back to the others, who hadn't changed. Who are they? I asked the guy from Spanish class, whose name I'd forgotten, as he looked up to see who I meant, though he could probably guess from my tone. Suddenly, she looked at us, the perfect one. She looked back at my neighbor for just a fraction of a second, and then her dark eyes flickered to mine. Long eyes, angled at the corners, thick lashes. She looked away quickly, faster than I could, though I dropped my stare as soon as she glanced our way. I could feel the patches of red start to bloom in my face. In that brief flash of a glance, her face wasn't interested at all. It was like he had called her name, and she looked up involuntarily response, already having decided not to answer. My neighbor laughed once, uncomfortable, looking down at the table, like I did. He muttered his answer under his breath. Those are the Collins and the Hales. Edythe and Eleanor Collin, Jasmine and Royal Hale. The one who left was Archie Collin. They lived with Dr. Collin and her husband. A glance sideways at the perfect girl. Who was looking at her tray now, picking at the bagel to pieces with thin, pale fingers. Her mouth was moving very quickly, her full lips barely opening. The other 3 looked away, but I still thought she might be speaking quietly to them. Weird names, old-fashioned, the kinds of name grandparents had, like my name. Maybe that was a thing here, small-town names. And then I finally remembered that my neighbor was named Jeremy, a totally normal name. There were 2 kids named Jeremy in my history class back at home. They're all very good-looking. What an understatement. Yeah, Jeremy agreed with another laugh. They're all together, though. Royal and Eleanor, Archie and Jasmine. like dating, you know, and they lived together. He snickered and wagged his eyebrows suggestively. I didn't know why, but his reaction made me want to defend them. Maybe just because he sounded so judgmental. But what could I say? I didn't know anything about them. Which ones are the Cullens? I asked, wanting to change the tone, but not the subject. They don't look related. Well, I mean, sort of. Oh, they're not. Dr. Cullen is really young, early 30s. The Cullen kids are all adopted. The Hales, the blondes, are brother and sister. Twins, I think. And they're some kind of foster kids. They look old for foster kids. They are now. Royal and Jasmine are both 18, but they've been with Mr. Cullen since they were little. He's their uncle, I think. That's kind of amazing for them to take care of all those kids when they're so young and everything. I guess so, Jeremy said, though it sounded like he'd rather not say anything positive, as if he didn't like the doctor and her husband for some reason. And the way he was looking at their adopted kids, I could guess there might be some jealousy involved. I think Dr. Cullen can't have any kids, though, he added, as if somehow it made what they were doing less admirable. Through all this conversation, I couldn't keep my eyes away from the strange family for more than a few seconds at a time. They continued to look at the walls and not eat. Have they always lived in Forks? I asked. How could I never have noticed them during my summers here? No, they just moved down 2 years ago from somewhere in Alaska. I felt a strange wave of pity. My relief. Pity because, as beautiful as they were still outsiders, not accepted. Relief that I wasn't the only newcomer here, and definitely not the most interesting by any standard. As I examined them again, the perfect girl, one of the Cullens, As I examined them again, the perfect girl, one of the Cullens, looked at me and met my gaze, this time with obvious curiosity. As I immediately looked away, I thought that her look held some kind of unanswered expectation. Which one is the girl with the reddish brown hair? I asked. I tried to glance casually in that direction, like I was just checking out the cafeteria. She was still staring at me, but not gawking like the other kids had to them. She had this frustrated expression I didn't understand. I looked down again. That's Edythe. She's hot, sure, but don't waste your time. She doesn't go out with anyone. Apparently none of the guys here are good enough for her, Jeremy said sourly. Then he grunted. I wondered how many times she turned him down. I pressed my lips together to hide a smile. Then I glanced at her again. Edythe. Her face was turned away, but I thought from the shape of her cheek she might be smiling too. At a few more minutes, the four of them left the table together. They were seriously graceful, even the Golden Prom King. It was strange to watch them in motion together. Edythe didn't look at me again. I sat at the table with Jeremy and his friends, longer than I would if I'd been sitting alone. I didn't want to be late for class on my first day. One of the new acquaintances who politely reminded me that his name was Alan had biology too, with me next hour. We walked to class together in silence. He was probably shy like me. We entered the classroom. Alan went to sit in the blacktop lab table, exactly like the ones I was used to at home. He already had a neighbor, in fact. All the tables were filled but one. Next to the center, I recognized Edythe Cullen by her unusual metallic hair sitting next to a single open seat. My heart started, pounding a little faster than usual. As I walked down the aisle to do my required intro for the teacher and get my slip signed, I was watching her, trying to make it discreet. Just as I paused, she suddenly went rigid in her seat. Her face jerked up towards mine so fast it surprised me, staring with the strangest expression. It was more than angry. It was furious, hostile. I looked away, stunned, going red again. I stumbled over the book in the walkway and had to catch myself on the edge of the table. The girl sitting there giggled. I've been right about the eyes. They were black, coal black. Miss Banner signed my slip and handed me a book with no nonsense about introductions and no mention of my full name. I could tell we were going to get along. Of course, she had no choice but to send me to one of the open seats in the middle of the room. I kept my eyes down as I went to sit by her, confused and awkward, wondering what I could have done to earn the to have earned the furious glare she had given me. I don't look up as I set my books on the table and took my seat, but I saw her posture change from the corner of my eye. She was leaning away from me, sitting on the extreme edge of her chair and averting her face like she smelled something bad. Inconspicuously, I sniffed. My shirt smelled like laundry detergent. How could that be offensive? I scooted my chair to the right, giving her as much space as I could, and tried to pay attention to the teacher. The lecture was on cellular anatomy, something I had already studied. I took notes carefully anyway, always looking down. I couldn't stop myself from shooting the occasional glance at the strange girl next to me. Throughout the entire class, she never relaxed, her stiff position on the edge of her chair, sitting as far as me as possible, with her hair hiding most of her face. Her hand was clenched into a fist on the top of her left thigh, tendons standing out under her pale skin. This, too, she never relaxed. She had the sleeves of her white henley pushed up to her elbows, and her forearm flexed with surprisingly hard muscle beneath her pale skin. I couldn't help but notice how perfect that skin was. Not a freckle, not one scar. The class seemed to drag on longer than the rest. Was it because the day was finally ending, or because I was waiting for her tight fists to loosen? It never did. She continued to sit so still, it looked like she wasn't even breathing. What was wrong with her? Was this how she usually acted? I questioned my quick judgment on Jeremy's sour grapes at lunch. Maybe he wasn't just resentful. This couldn't have anything to do with me. She didn't know me from Adam. Miss Banner passed some quizzes back when the class was almost done. She handed me one to give to the girl. I glanced at the top automatically, 100%, and I'd been spelling her name wrong in my head. It was Edythe, not Edith. I'd never seen it spelled that way, but it fit her better. I glanced down at her as I slid the paper over, and then instantly regretted it. She was glaring up at me again, her long black eyes full of revulsion. As I flinched away from the hate radiating from her, the phrase, "If looks could kill," suddenly ran through my mind. At that moment the bell rang, loudly, making me jump, and Edith Cullen was out of her seat. She moved like a dancer, every perfect line of her slim body in harmony with all the others. Her back to me, and she was out of the door before anyone else was out of their seat. I sat frozen in my seat, staring blankly after her. She was so harsh. I began gathering up my things slowly, trying to block out the confusion and guilt that filled me. Why should I feel guilty? I hadn't done anything wrong. How could I have? I hadn't actually even met her. "Aren't you Buford Swan?" a female voice asked. I looked up to see a cute baby-faced girl, her hair carefully flat-ironed into a pale blonde curtain, smiling at me in a friendly way. She obviously didn't think I smelled bad. "Beau," I corrected her, smiling back. "I'm Michaela." "Hi, Michaela. Do you need any help finding your next class?" "I'm headed to gym, actually. I think I can find it." "That's my next class, too." She seemed thrilled, though it wasn't such a big coincidence in a school this small. We walked to class together. She was a chatterer. She supplied most of the conversation, which made it easy for me. She lived in California till she was 10, and so she got how I felt about the sun. It turned out she'd been in my English class, too. She was the nicest person I met today. But as we were entering the gym, she asked, "So did you stab Edythe with a pencil or what? I've never seen her act like that." I whinged. I guess I wasn't the only one who noticed, and apparently that wasn't Edith Cullen's usual behavior. I decided to play dumb. "Was that the girl I sat next to in biology?" "Yeah," she said. She looked like she was in pain or something. "I don't know," I responded. I never spoke to her. "She's weird." Michaela lingered by me instead of heading to the dressing room. "If I got to sit by you, I would have talked to you." I smiled at her before walking through the boys' locker room door. She was kind and seemed to like me, but that wasn't enough to make me forget the last strange hour. The gym teacher, Coach Cap, found me a uniform, but she didn't make me dress down for today's class. At home, only 2 years of PE were required. Here, PE was mandatory all 4 years. My own special version of hell. I watched 4 volleyball games running simultaneously, remembering how many injuries I had sustained and inflicted playing volleyball. I felt a little nauseated. The final bell rang at last. I walked slowly to the office to return my paperwork. The rain had faded away, but the wind was strong and colder. I zipped my jacket up and shoved my free hand into my pocket. When I walked into the warm office, I almost turned around and walked back out. Edythe Collins stood at the desk in front of me. Impossible not to recognize her tangled bronze hair. She didn't seem to notice the sound of my entrance. I stood pressed against the back wall, waiting for the balding receptionist to be free. She was arguing with him in a low, velvety voice. I quickly picked up the gist of the argument. She was trying to trade from 6-hour biology to any other time. This could not be about me. It had to be something else, something that happened before I got to biology room. The look on her face must have been about some other person. It was impossible that a stranger could take such a sudden, intense dislike to me. I wasn't interested enough to be worth that strong of a reaction. The door opened, and the cold wind suddenly gusted through the room, rustling the papers on the desk, waving through my hair. The girl who came in merely stepped to the desk, placed a note in the wire basket, and walked out again. But Edythe Collins' back stiffened, and she turned slowly to glare at me. Her face was ridiculously perfect, not even one tiny flaw to make her seem human. With piercing, hate-filled eyes for an instant, I felt the oddest thrill of genuine fear raising the hair on my arms, as if she were going to pull a gun out and shoot me. The look only lasted a second, but it was colder than the freezing wind. She turned back to the receptionist. "Never mind then," she said quickly, in a voice like silk. "I can see that it's impossible. Thank you so much for your help." And she turned on her heel without another look at me and disappeared out the door. I went robotically to the desk, my face white for once instead of red, and handed him the signed slip. "How did your first day go, son?" he asked. "Fine," I lied, my voice cracking. I could see I hadn't convinced them. When I got to the truck, it was almost the last car in the lot. It seemed like heaven. Already the closest thing to home I had in this wet green hell. I sat inside for a while, just staring at the windshield blankly. But soon I was cold enough to want the heater, so I turned the key and the engine roared to life. I headed back to Charlie's house, trying to think of nothing at all.